but not Music Money's merch, just merch in general. So I think this will be a really cool topic because I see a lot of people always asking this kind of question, and they never really know whether they should be dropping merch, when should they drop merch, etc., etc., etc. Right? So I think this will be like a very healthy topic for sure. Loudest, what's good? I hope you're well. Welcome on in, my friend. Happy motherfucking Monday. So, um, like I said, man, yeah, let's talk merch. I see a lot of artists ask themselves this question a lot. When should I drop merch? Should I drop merch? Do y'all like this design? Blah 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 blah. Right? And not a lot of people like fully execute, right? It's pretty easy to come up with like designs and things like that, but actually getting merch handled is like a whole other thing, never mind actually selling merch, right? So I think without really like talking about the process, right? Because that's like a whole other video. I think we could like break down the process of like, printing and designs and quality and things like that. I think that's like a whole other segment. But I think what we're going to talk about here is like mainly the when, how, and where, right? Because I think, like I said, like that's really like the more important thing is like the poor execution or the kind of like poor timing for when people do merch, right? Because you'll see a lot of people do merch pretty much all the time, right? But are they exactly selling out? Are they losing money? Are they gaining money? Are they even selling anything at all? Well, I think a lot of this comes from the question of pretty much what we started with, right? Like, should you drop merch? Well, I don't think I don't think there's too many clear factors other than what kind of support you have, like IRL and of course online, right? But for people with larger audiences, it's kind of a no-brainer to go and do merch, right? Because people will buy it, people will love it, people want to support you, etc., etc., etc. But there comes a certain time where you need to be doing this, right? Like you don't want to be a new artist with like three songs out and you're like, damn, I'm about to like put out, some regular basic t-shirts. Because obviously it's most likely not gonna sell outside of like IRL support. And don't get me wrong, IRL support's great. Even Music Mondays has a lot of like IRL support. But when it comes to actually like having a quote unquote successful drop, um there's a couple of things, right? Like it all depends on what your goals are. Like if your goals are just to actually like have some merch on hand, I don't think that's a bad idea. If you're doing a bunch of shows, I don't think it's a bad idea either to have a bunch of merch on hand. But it's going to be different for everybody, but I think the main thing you want to ask yourself is like how many of these, pieces, whether they're short sleeve, long sleeve, whatever the merch is, like it could be lighters, any merch realistically, not even just t-shirts. Um like even like hard CDs and shit, right? Like a lot of stuff is sometimes made to pre-order, which can get very costly, right? So if you're kind of paying for website domains and memberships and things like that, there's that whole avenue of it, and then the actual manufacturing part of it. So you have to factor in a lot of this when you're like, okay, like should I do merch, and if you're actually legit about it, right? Because there's gonna be people that just wanted to just have it, which I think is sick too. You know what I mean? Like some personal pieces are always fire. I think personal pieces are always great. Um, and fuck, Shopify is like a really great tool as well. But again, like a lot of that stuff gets costly if you don't have a consistent support base, right? So you really gotta look at the timing of it. I think timing is probably one of the most important factors, right? Like, is your support like at its highest? Are you going to be doing shows? How much IRL support are you going to get, right? Because um, it's one of those things where if you time it wrong, you'll end up with a bunch of lost finances, right? You just put a bunch of money into a store and da 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 da, and you sold like three shirts, and you're like, fuck. You know what I mean? But I mean, there's learning in that too. I'm not saying that's like the end of the world, but there is a way to time it as to where, say, again, like it kind of has to do with growth, and it kind of doesn't because you could have all the numbers in the world, right, on streaming and on socials and things like that, but that doesn't necessarily correlate with merch or show numbers. That doesn't mean people are going to be buying tickets to your shows. That doesn't mean people are going to be buying your merch, right? So you have to look at the raw support of it. So that's why I would say start small. You know what I mean? Do a limited quantity, right? I think limited quantity is way better than like opening a full store. Just so you can kind of test the waters and really get them like, you know, kind of like it's really about getting your feet wet too, right? Especially if you're doing this by yourself or you're doing this with your team. I think those are like a lot of important factors there for sure. Like it's not like a one size fits all shoe. It's really not. It's definitely one of those things where it depends on who you are, it depends on where you're at in your career, right? Like I would never recommend doing merch like early on unless it was like for yourself, right? Like you have to have somewhat of an audience to cater to. Because nobody's just gonna like the reason why people buy your merch is because obviously they love your art, they love your music and things like that, but they want to support you, right? But people who don't listen to your music or don't support you are never going to buy your merch. So you can't just expect them to pop out of thin air. You know what I mean? Like, sure, people might like your design or whatever, but people will buy anything if you put it on a shirt and they love you. You know, like there's a ton of like really like um just subpar merch from like bigger companies, but people eat it up because they want to support them and they love rocking their shit. So I think that has a little bit to do with it as well, right? So it's not really like a numbers thing. It's more so like the actual muscle of the support. So there's a lot of factors to really consider there before you just kind of dump a bunch of money into merch and like pray to like the merch gods that everything's gonna sell. Because I mean, kind of like dropping your first song. Like, of course it's not gonna do well. But same thing with merch. Like, of course your first drop might not do well. Like, even like the Music Mondays drop did really well for our first drop, right? But there's a long road ahead when it comes down to that. So it's all about the timing. And you have to time it at a point where you as an artist or you as a person are at your peak, right? But not like your metaphorical peak, but like if you're at a point where you look at yourself in the mirror and you're like, holy shit, I've never gotten this much support on my music and my this, my that, like say my shows. I think a lot of that is like a big deciding factor on whether you should do any merch, right? Whether it is t-shirts, lighters, stickers, literally stickers, right? Like it could be anything. So kind of an interesting topic, but definitely something I want to kind of just chop it up a bit about and really give some thoughts on. Because again, it's definitely not a one size fits all shoe, but I do think that if you are aware of the timing, you'll be able to save yourself some grief, right? And a lot of like energy if you just know how to time it right. And you're like, damn, like everything's doing really good. Like there's so many examples of like when, where, or like why you should do merch, right? Like even you could take that philosophy and apply it to like shit, like even a Twitch stream or a YouTuber. Like say you have a video like pop off on YouTube, right? You're a Minecraft YouTuber. That'd be the time to open a low merch store, right? Because you're getting a lot of traffic. You're kind of it's not like your peak, but when I say peak, that's what I'm talking about, right? You're doing the best you've ever done till that day type shit. So again, you could apply that philosophy to anything, not just musicians, right? But that's what we're talking about here today. So again, think about the timing of it and think about when it would do best in your mind and when it makes sense for people to actually want to support you to that degree, right? So again, if you have any questions or want to drop any merch tips or thoughts on that, definitely leave them in the comments. And of course, this will be uploaded on the channel. Make sure you drop a like, subscribe. We're like 3 subs away from 260. Go show the channel love, and let's fucking get it, baby.